station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, thank you for listening this beautiful Wednesday morning. It's time now to learn a little bit about American history. If I were to ask any of you to name the founding fathers, we refer to the founding fathers quite often. We say the founding fathers would have this and would have believed this and would have wanted that, right? And I think anybody who's studied the Constitution and knows American history probably has a good grip of what the founding fathers as a group probably believed and what they would have wanted. But sometimes history gets skewed a little bit. One of the things that skewed it, according to our next guest, was an HBO program called John Adams. And maybe the series didn't necessarily skew everything, but it certainly seems to have skewed or misskewed. I don't know if I'm saying the right words here. One of the founding fathers by the name of John Dickinson, and William Murchison is on the phone. I hope I'm saying his name correctly, to teach us a little bit about John Dickinson. Mr. Murchison is a researcher, specializes in historical and cultural subjects. He's a journalist, a commentator, an editor, and his book is called The Cost of Liberty, The Life of John Dickinson, known as the penman of the Revolution, one of the founding fathers of the United States of America. Let's say good morning to William Murchison. Good morning, William.
Thank you, Larry. Happy to be with you this morning.
And am I doing all right with your last name?
Murchison, yes, that's fine.
Okay, all right. Well, and where are you? Where are you calling from?
Calling from Dallas.
Okay, so let's start with the John Adams miniseries. What did he get wrong about John Dickinson?
Well, the John Adams miniseries was a good miniseries in many respects, but you know, in large-scale dramas, you have to have heroes and you have to have opponents of the heroes to give a little color and flavor and excitement to the proceedings. And so, in the course of the run-up to independence in the Adams series, John Dickinson had to play the role of Adamson's opponent, Adams' foil,
as
it were. So that somebody had to oppose independence in order to make John Adams look better. Well, The problem here is that the writers of the script pulled Dickinson out of a kind of a void, and put him before the viewing public, without presenting really any clear view for the viewing public of what Dickinson was all about. Dickinson was one of the great exponents of liberty then alive in the United States. He was one of the greatest of the founding fathers. He was on a level with Adams, on a level with Franklin and Jefferson, and yet because of the dramatic necessity to make him look like some kind of a stumbling foe of independence, he had to be put in the wrong position. He did not vote for the Declaration of Independence. In July 1776, he stood aside and let Pennsylvania vote for it. But here's what he did that I think is equally to the point and equally worth noting. He immediately put himself forward in uniform as a soldier of the United States, of the future United States, to fight against the British. Only 2 members of the Continental Congress did that. The other member was Thomas McCain of Delaware. John Dickinson made himself vulnerable on the front lines to British artillery and British musketry. He fought for what he could not vote for. He was not a soldier by nature. He was a philosopher, an orator, but he put his life on the line for the United States. And I think we should honor him for that.
Okay, so why was he reluctant to sign the Declaration of Independence? I'm not clear about that.
Well, Larry, he felt that the time had not come. He was in favor of the assertion of colonial rights against the British attempts to narrow and to impose on those rights. But his position was that the colonies were not yet a united force. There was great dissent throughout the colonies at that time as to the course of action that ought to be taken. I mean, after all, these were Englishmen living in the colonies who were reluctant, many of them, to step aside from their connection with their fellow Englishmen across the Atlantic. There was nothing like unity existing in 1776. The second point was, as Dickinson asserted it, that there was no assurance, and none had been sought, none had been gained, that foreign countries like France would come to the aid and assistance of the colonies. So those 2 points made it very uncertain that it was time in July 1776 to assert the independence of the colonies. Dickinson thought that it ought to be done, but he thought the time had not come. And it was a conscientious matter that exposed him to Adams's censure and also to the regret of colonists who had supported him as fans, as admirers of his writing in defense of American liberty for the last 10 years.
Oh wow! Yeah, and was he when you call him the penman of the Revolution? Explain that.
Yes. Oh, Larry, before I do that, I'm getting feedback on my end. I wonder if anything could be addressed on that. I hear myself talking in the background.
Oh my goodness!
As well as talking. Can anything be done, or shall I just plod forward?
Let me just address that. I don't have anything to do. I can't control that, but you sound fine on our end. So it's
all right. I just hear myself whenever.
Yeah, it's probably because the internet or something.
I think it's better. I think it's better now. Okay, you ask me that question again, would you please?
The penman of the Revolution. We're calling him the penman. What does that actually mean?
The penman of the Revolution was a nickname that was attached to him during his life, or especially after his life, and that had to do with the fact that he wrote most of the major colonial documents that were framed as protest to the Crown in behalf of American rights. He was an eloquent, well-trained philosopher, statesman, a relatively young man. He was in his 40s, but he had he had studied at the Middle Temple in London. He was a lawyer trained by the English as one who understood British the tradition of British liberties. He was well read in history. He was as well qualified, if not better qualified, than anybody else in the colonies at that time to make the case for the assertion of American rights. And he did that with great eloquence. He wrote the protest of the Stamp Act Congress. He wrote later on the declaration on the causes and necessity of taking up arms against the British. He wrote appeals to the Parliament and to the King for better understanding of the colonist case. He wrote most centrally a series of pamphlets called Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania, and those letters made him a celebrity throughout the colonies. He was a man who set the case for American liberties in better form and with better attention paid to it than anybody else had done at that time. It was an anonymous series of pamphlets, and he made plain the American case for the observance of their rights as Englishmen. No taxation without representation. That was the battle cry that went down throughout the entire run-up to the independence of the country. And not only did he sir, I don't know that I would also point out that he, as penman of the American Revolution, he wrote the first draft of the Articles of Confederation, so that those who formulated the Articles were building on his handiwork.
So now he was listed as the president of Pennsylvania? I didn't even know there was such a thing.
There was only a president of Pennsylvania during the Articles of Confederation phase of independence. After the after the Constitution, he became the governor of Pennsylvania. But
I got you. Okay.
Dickinson did not serve.
So it's
as
just a
governor.
title.
The title was president of Pennsylvania at that time. He was actually president of Delaware before he was president of Pennsylvania.
Oh, really?
Yes. So he was doing a very good job in Delaware and Pennsylvania, which contained the three lower southeastern counties, now known as Delaware, called him up to Philadelphia to become president.
Was he, and were the other founding fathers, compared to the other colonists, was he wealthy?
He was wealthy, yes. He was a successful planter. He came from a family that had been in the colonies since the late 17th century. They had staked out a lot of land in Delaware, and that land was subsequently expanded into Pennsylvania. He was not only wealthy in his own right as a planter and a landowner, but also as a lawyer. He was one of the most prominent lawyers in the colonies. As I mentioned a few moments ago, he had been trained for the bar in the Middle Temple in London. And he had been admitted to the bar in London. He was a full practicing member of the English bar in consequence of his training at the Middle Temple. He was a highly successful advocate. And this made him a successful advocate for colonial rights. Once he stepped into the cause of defending American liberties.
Was he friends with Thomas Jefferson?
Yes, he was. He was an admirer of Thomas Jefferson's, and he had, of course, declined to sign the Declaration of Independence. But he and Jefferson espoused basically the same political principles. And upon Dickinson's death in 1808, Dickinson was praised by Thomas Jefferson as a more estimable man or truer patriot could not have left us. His name will be consecrated in history as one of the great worthies of the Revolution. That's what Thomas Jefferson said about him.
Oh, wow.
They really thought alike in many respects.
This is we're talking about a biography of John Dickinson. Is it fair to call it a biography?
It is a biography of John Dickinson, the first one written in 50 years, I have to say, and in fact only the third written in the last 200 years since Dickinson's death. There was one written in the 19th century. There was another one written in 1962.
So
and mine is only the third biography.
Wow,
of this great man.
Okay, so aside from those other two, how were you able to research him?
Well, for one thing, Dickinson was a voluminous writer. As being penman of the Revolution, he left all manner of documents that he crafted for consideration by the British Parliament and by the King. He wrote letters. He wrote pamphlets. He was inexhaustible as a writer, and he left a paper trail miles long. So it was a lot of fun looking at what Dickinson had written and noting the eloquence and the clarity with which he did it. And he deserves, on my reading, far more appreciation for his style, for the depth of his philosophy, and for his success at presenting that philosophy than he is ever going to receive, just on the basis of his reputation as an opponent of John Adams.
Was he an advocate for the colonists before he left England? Was he aware of this growing unrest before he left England, or was he not aware of it until he got there?
He was not. There was no unrest at that time. He left London on the eve of the French and Indian Wars, when the colonists were still wedded to the British connection. He left London in 1756 and took up the practice of law in Pennsylvania. It was only after the end of the 7 Years' War, and that was 1763, that the colonists then began to regard the intentions of their British friends and cousins as being unfriendly to them. And so Dickinson very quickly. Dickinson was a loyal Englishman, as most Americans, including John Adams, were before the American Revolution. John Dickinson said on one occasion, "Every drop of blood in my body is British," and he meant it. But this affected the disappointment that he felt in the inability of the British government to see his case. If he loved England, why were the colonies not loved in return by the British government? Why was it a British policy to restrict American liberties and impose on them to the extent that they were imposed upon for raising of taxes?
When you're writing a biography of somebody who's lived so long ago, and you have his writings to go by, does a biographer, maybe in your case, yes, or it could be somebody else, but would a biographer take liberties to fill in the blanks that weren't made available?
Well, sometimes that happens. I don't happen to approve of that. Sometimes people will put thoughts into the minds of their subjects.
Right. Well, like HBO did.
In a novelistic sort of way. I don't regard that as very...
Right. Well, that's what HBO did, right? With the miniseries.
Well, they did. They did take liberties with John Dickinson. For example, they showed John Adams visiting him the night before the vote on independence. And Dickinson is sitting at a desk and a table in his room. His wig is off. He looks downcast and unhappy. And this visit never happened. John Adams did not visit Dickinson to ask his acquiescence in the vote for independence the next day. Dickinson made that decision independently. We don't know what he did the night before. He may have paced around Philadelphia looking deep into the river, or he may have stayed home smoking a pipe. But at all events, HBO did take notable liberties with the actual state of affairs.
And speaking of liberty, the title of the book is called The Cost of Liberty. And just let me reintroduce our guest. William Murchison is on the phone. He's a researcher and historian, and he's written a biography of founding father from the revolution of this country, the revolutionary period of this country, John Dickinson, known as the penman of the revolution. The Cost of Liberty is the title. So why that title?
The Cost of Liberty was paid by Dickinson in very dear coin, as it turned out. There were several ways in which liberty cost John Dickinson a great deal. The sacrifices he made for liberty. First of all, he lost a certain amount of esteem among the more ardent revolutionaries of that time on account of his unwillingness to vote for independence. He predicted that before the vote, he would lose what he called a share of my too great reputation. And he did. There were many colonists who were angered at him, and they said, well, how can this guy, who's such a friend of liberty, not vote for liberty on the floor of the Continental Congress? Likewise, he lost property. The English sacked and burned his estate near Philadelphia called Fair Hill.
Oh, wow.
And they later sacked his estate near Wilmington, Delaware. So he had
a lot of
untimely violent visits by the British. And it took him quite a while during the course of the Revolutionary War to recover the esteem that he had seemingly thrown away, but he did a very pronounced and measurable job of it, and I think was regarded by the end of the war as a great patriot.
Bill, I have somebody on the phone. I hope you know we do the show live, and our listeners often will call in. Good morning. Thank you for being patient with us. You're on the air with William Murchison.
Thank you, Larry and Robin, and thanks for having such a neat author. Bill, I just looked up on the internet about Mr. Dickinson, and it shows that he is born in 1732 in Maryland. It looks like he is maybe his grandfather was born in England, and of course they they were plantation owners, and they did have slaves. And it seems to me, I'm not criticizing Dickinson, and I respect what I believe you're saying that he tried what he tried to do. I respect possibly where he was coming from, but it seems to me that many of, especially in the last 10 years, have been pushing the founding fathers a lot in our English narrative here in the United States. But I happen to have been an enlisted soldier, and I have much respect for the grunts of society. And I'm wondering, a large percentage of the founding fathers were plantation owners, including northern ones. But could you comment about his what his agenda was, Bill? In reference, was he trying to be a peacemaker, or was he trying to be conciliatory? He wasn't a loyalist back to England. And could you comment a little bit on about the grunts of the Revolutionary War? They don't seem to get any acknowledgement or any credit as we go around thanking the soldiers today for their service. So thank you.
Yes.
Author. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, thank you. Well, let me say very quickly a word about his record with regard to slavery. He owned about 36 slaves, all told, and they were mostly house servants, bakers, bricklayers, and that. And in 1777, he freed his slaves conditionally, and he freed them unconditionally in 1786. So he became an ex-slave owner, and he wrote abolition legislation for Delaware. The bill failed to pass, but he made the effort all the same. In terms of the so-called grunts, and I don't object to that characterization at all of the people of the colonies at that time. Dickinson was not a foe of their rights at all. What he thought was that liberty pertained to every man. Liberty as guaranteed by the great tradition of English law and given in the beginning by God. He received the proposition from the English constitutionalists that God was the author of liberty and that the laws existed to protect that liberty, and that liberty was not only for the well-born, but it was for the poor as well. Dickinson saw himself as defending the liberties of all the American people, regardless of their trades, regardless of their callings in life. So I think that Dickinson, in view of his commitment to not to privilege, but to liberty itself as a goal, as an end, ought to be thanked and respected by all the so-called grunts of the world, not just in the colonies, but in today's world.
All right. Well, obviously, we're learning something about a man we should know more about, and only the third biography ever written about him. That's pretty impressive. William Murchison, again, is our guest. The book is called The Cost of Liberty. William, how do we get the book, and do you have a website?
Well, I have a website, www.williammurchison.com.
Okay.
Another way to get the book is to go to Barnes & Noble or to go to Amazon.com.
There you go. That usually works.
Any of those will serve.
Is the book available as an ebook?
I don't think it is yet.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It is.
It is
available as an ebook.
Okay, excellent. Well, great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the air, and definitely come back with the next one.
I appreciate that so much. Good to talk to you all today.
You too. All right, we'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Phoenix Promotional Solutions, your company supplier of banners, digital decals, yard signs, and magnetic signs. Where you give them approved artwork by noon, the next day by 4 p.m., you pick up your banners, digital decals, yard signs, and magnetic signs. Phoenix Promotional Solutions, 368-2404. That's 368-2404. Don't forget, they do vehicle wraps also. Phoenix Promotional Solutions, 368-2404.
On the next Voice of Ocala, we're supposed to have Commissioner Dan McLean in studio, but after the way Buddy and I have treated the commissioners, because we're not real happy with their decision about whether the Yankees should be put on the ballot or not, we'll wait and see if Commissioner Stan McLean shows up. If he does, we'll have some hard questions that we're definitely going to ask him. Plus, we'll have all the latest sports, including how the University of Florida will fare this weekend against Vanderbilt. We'll talk about all that and more on the next Voice of Ocala, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, streaming live at WOCA.com. The Source.
So what did you do with your weekend? Me? I was flying, because I'm taking flying lessons from Ocala Aviation. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, I'd like to give that a shot, but I'm not quite sure. Well, I've got the solution. It's called the Discovery Flight, and that's exactly what it is. It helps you discover the wonder of flying and if it's for you. It's only $99, and it gives you the chance to learn a bit more about the airplane and then actually go for a ride with a flight instructor and take control of the airplane. That's how I got started, and now I'm on my way to being a pilot. Yeah, I know, scary thought, right? But the demand for qualified pilots is stronger than ever, and with the help of Ocala Aviation, you could make a career change and learn to be a commercial pilot. But it all starts with a Discovery Flight. So stop by the flight school, conveniently located at the Ocala Airport, visit the website at ocalaaviation.com, or call 861-7484. That's 861-7484. Ocala Aviation. Your adventure starts here.
Hi, Robin. You look tired.
I am. I've been running all over town.
Why? Why not drive?
I need to get this stupid document notarized.
Well, that's easy. You need personal service.
Duh. That's what I've been looking for.
You need to go see Mark at the Personal Service Center. He can notarize that for you, make copies, fax it wherever, or send it out in the mail. Heck, he can even scan it and email it for you.
Really? Where is he at?
2375 Northeast 25th Avenue, on the corner of Northeast 25th Avenue and 24th Street. You can call him at 789-6683.
Personal Service Center. Thanks, Larry.
Here are today's headlines from The Source, WOCA. A House Republican is driving forward with plans to replace the state's no-fault auto insurance coverage 2 years after lawmakers passed reforms to try to rid the system of fraud. However, the proposal continues to be reviewed in a deliberative and thoughtful manner in the Senate, as a number of insurance officials have tempered their call for a change after a constitutional challenge to the 2012 reform law was recently sidetracked. Representative Carlos Trujillo, a Republican from Miami, yesterday filed two measures, House Bill 267 and House Bill 269, directed at making bodily injury coverage, which a vast majority of motorists in Florida already purchase, the replacement for no fault. The measures replicate a draft being put together by Senate Banking and Insurance Chairman David Simmons, a Republican from Altamont Springs. Simmons said he will continue to gather input on the proposal after his committee reviewed the potential change yesterday. Simmons had been advancing the measure at the request of some insurance officials who said they did not expect reforms to the decades-old personal injury protection auto insurance system, also known as PIP and also known as no fault, to fully take hold. The Star Banner is reporting that the Ocala City Council sent a request to the Marion County Commission yesterday to put a 5-year half-cent sales tax on the ballot for voters to consider the building of a baseball stadium for the New York Yankees Class A minor league team. In addition to the request for the sales tax referendum, the county would also agree to own the stadium premises by December 31st of this year. If approved and built, the stadium would seat between 4,500 and 5,000 spectators. The sales tax is estimated to generate $82.88 million over the course of 5 years, according to the report. The stadium would be located west of I-75 behind Kohl's department store off of State Road 200. The average ticket price to watch a baseball game is expected to be between $7 and $9, and the city of Ocala would receive 75 cents per ticket. The New York Yankees would be contracted to remain a tenant for 25 years with 3 10-year renewal options. After almost 20 years of being illegal, the controversial nets that entangle fish by the gills can once again be dragged through Florida's waters. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission issued a memo on Friday directing its officers to stop enforcing the 18-year-old gill net ban after Leon County Judge Jackie Fulford had ordered as much. Fulford recently ruled in favor of a group of Northwest Florida mullet fishermen who say the 1994 state constitutional amendment that established the gill net ban and the rules Florida enacted to enforce it don't jibe. But some worry allowing fishermen to use gill nets, even temporarily as the legal battle continues, could gut mullet and other fish populations the ban was designed to protect. Fulford's ruling comes at peak mullet spawning season, they warn, when the so-called roe mullet are plump with eggs. Others say most gill nets vanished after the ban took effect, so the threat, if any, would come from across state lines. And a baby giraffe born last month is set to make his first appearance with the rest of the herd today at the Zoo Miami. The baby was born on October 30th to a 6-year-old female named Miami, and Fezzik, a 16-year-old male. The newborn weighed 152 pounds and was 6 feet tall. It hasn't yet been named. This is Mia's third baby and the 46th giraffe born to the zoo. Fezzik was born at the St. Louis Zoo and arrived in Miami in 1998. The giraffe pregnancy lasts about 15 months, and the mother doesn't usually lie down during birth. According to the zoo, when the baby was born, it fell 6 feet to the ground. And those are the headlines from the source, WOCA 96.3 FM and 1370 AM.
Hi, I'm Leah Caruso with Strive Rehabilitation, inviting you to join me Thursday at 11 a.m. for Health Matters. Ocala Health and Strive have teamed up to bring you the latest information on good health services available to you right here at home. This vital information will help you make informed decisions about your health. So don't forget to join me here at 11 a.m. Thursday. It's news you can use from Ocala Health, Strive, and your friends here at WOCA.
Habitat for Humanity of Marion County is a ministry dedicated to improving lives by providing affordable and decent housing. Help them help others by visiting the Habitat for Humanity Ocala home store on Northwest 27th Avenue. To schedule a donation, give them a call and they'll come and pick it up. For more information, visit habitatocala.org. Habitat for Humanity of Marion County, building homes, building hope, building community.
Common Ground. That story coming up on This Land of Ours.
Your Beef Checkoff does all kinds of things to help make sure consumers feel good about buying beef. And it's beef and dairy producers like you making decisions on how to invest your $1 per head checkoff to ensure beef makes its way to more meat cases, menus, and kitchen tables. And thanks to that careful investment, your Beef Checkoff returns more than $5.50 for every $1 invested. Get to know your checkoff and start sharing your views at mybeefcheckoff.com. Paid for by the Beef Checkoff.
Timberland Cattle would like to invite you to their Best of the Black Angus and Sim Angus Bull Sale, which will be held at the farm located at 15281 County Road 49, Vernon, Alabama, on Saturday, November 16th at 12 noon. Bill Freeman, owner, and Thomas Pennington, manager, will be offering for sale registered Black Angus and Black Sim Angus bulls with outstanding genetics. For more information and to view the sale catalog, visit their website, www.timberlandcattle.com, or call 205-695-6314.
Food containing GMOs is a hot topic right now, and in an effort to address such issues, the United Soybean Board and the National Corn Growers have developed a common ground, a grassroots movement to foster conversations between women farmers who grow food and the women in urban areas who buy it. Soybean and corn farmer Christy Swinson is a Common Ground volunteer.
When you think about what you buy in the grocery store, there are so many levels of testing and food security and so many rules and regulations that farmers have to follow to ensure that we are producing safe, quality food to put on consumers' tables.
Swinson says she also tells consumers about how biotechnology helps decrease the farmer's impact on the environment.
GMO crops let us have cleaner air and cleaner water because we aren't spraying the amounts of chemicals, insecticides, pesticides, and herbicides that we used to spray before GMO crops.
To learn more, log on to findourcommonground.com. Julie McPeak with Southeast AgNet.
This is a public notice. Local residents can now save thousands of dollars on their next car, truck, or SUV. It's not a 10 sale because no